basically I'm filling out for him. And that's why I've kind of tried to create my speech a bit last minute, so I apologize for the lack of preparedness. What I'm going to highlight is basically one study that I conducted as part of my job at EFSAS, and I think it's basically highlighting one aspect of the ongoing conflict in the region of Jammu and Kashmir and the terrorism that is tend to be overlooked very often. Some of the previous speakers already mentioned the fact that there has been a lot of killings. There's like the ongoing radicalization of the youth. You have like sexual violence, etc. But at the same time, terrorism also has a lot of effects on the mental health of the population that remains living. So this was a study that we worked on, and the idea was recognizing what are the effects on the mental health of the population of Jammu and Kashmir. While we acknowledge the fact that most likely there are very serious, dangerous developments and mental health problems in the Pakistani administered side of Kashmir, unfortunately, due to lack of available research data and medical records, our study was only restricted to the territory of Indian administered Jammu and Kashmir. So what we found is that while usually individuals are unlikely to be exposed to any traumatic stressor at any given time in their life, in the mental health survey report conducted by the Doctors Without Borders in 2016 found that on average an adult in Kashmir has witnessed up to 8 traumatic events in their course of life. The reported traumatic experiences include like terrorist attacks, explosions, assault with weapon, crackdowns, kidnappings, imprisonment, interrogation, torture, enforced disappearances, violent death of someone known, sexual assault, and physical assault. In addition to that, apart from the direct victims of these traumatic events, emergency services like medical personnel and firefighters are also exposed to such traumatic stressors. As an inevitable counterterrorism measure, the prevalence of security personnel further results in the militarization of society. Therefore, society develops feelings of intimidation, which ultimately undermines the normal interaction and community life. This, coupled with the high youth unemployment rates, the broken and uncertain economy, and breakdown of social support systems, gives rise to stressors which negatively impact the livelihood and the well-being of the whole population. Therefore, it does not come as a surprise that large sections of the Kashmiri society have begun to suffer from various mental illnesses and disorders. Communities affected by conflict often could be split in 3 groups. One is those experiencing disabling psychiatric illnesses. Second is those with severe reactions to trauma. And third, those who are able to adapt once peace and order is restored. Again, while earlier mentioned, while under normal circumstances, only 1 to 3% of the general population experiences any type of psychiatric disorders. In the case of Jammu and Kashmir, as per the survey of 2015, nearly 1.8 million adults in the Kashmir Valley are suffering from symptoms of mental health distress, with 41% exhibiting signs of depression, 26% signs of anxiety, and 19% signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, with residents from the districts of Baramulla and Bugdam exhibiting the highest rates of all 3. And that could be very much connected with the fact that there are hotbeds of terrorism in the region. So it's also striking to mention the fact that in 1989, only 1,700 people were attending psychiatric hospitals, but in 2017 this number was up to 100,000. Taking into account the social stigma attached to frequenting mental health institutions in Kashmir, while this number is alarming, it shows that very likely the real number is much higher due to underreporting. Doctors in the region also estimate that no more than 10% of the population who are actually in need of psychiatric help actually visits the designated institutions. And this is both a reason because of the stigma attached, but also lack of knowledge of what's available when it comes to treatment. There was another study in 2013 13 that amongst the sample of 200 residents in Srinagar discovered that 90% of the respondents have become fearful, 87 have had sleeping disorders, 86 experienced stress, depression, and psychological stress, 66 had lost interest in their life, 60% were feeling the re-experience of the incident, so they were constantly reminded, 30% had nightmares, 38% have become aggressive, and 27% were vulnerable to suicide. So these are very alarming statistics, especially when it comes to the latter, the suicide attempts. Since between 1994 and 2012, suicide attempts have increased by 250%. Children living under institutional care, mainly we speak about orphans, are particularly vulnerable to mental health problems, which could further deteriorate with time and impair also their long-term ability to complete their education, find job, establish social contacts, and parent their own children. While there is not a precise number on the, there's no precise estimate on the number of orphans and widows in Kashmir, according to different sources, figures often range between 100,000 and 200,000 a year. Oftentimes, when we also talk about widows, it's important to mention the fact that many widows are also, women have become widows because they were married to a militant who got killed. And another study that looked into the effects on the family situation of killed militants found out that amongst the 100 families interviewed, 94 answered that they've experienced negative emotional impact on their, on the core of their families. 81% argued that the emotional trauma deteriorated their physical health. The majority of the widows did not remarry after the incident, which is also a common practice in the region. But this also creates a further issue because for women who become widows, there's like feelings of loneliness, lack of support at home, social insecurity, economic hardship, lack of help with the children, social apathy, marginalization from society, and in general ill treatment on behalf of the relatives and neighbors. In addition to that, 68% of the respondents said that they also faced stigma and isolation on behalf of the rest of the community. In many cases, the killed militant was also the sole breadwinner in the family, which then again put huge burden on the shoulders of these women and their children, so semi-orphans, who are oftentimes also minors. So as a result, a lot of these people, a lot of the children and women had to go to like menial or domestic jobs, finding themselves further intimidated or even like subject to like labor exploitation and being underpaid. The lack of governmental programs and funds for supporting them financially also results in further creating like a social handicap situation. And as per the study, 52% of the children of the killed militants had to drop from school, and 19 of them could not attend due to lack of resources. So this is particularly worrisome because this is further one reason that terrorist organizations are exploiting such orphans. Since in this type of environment, when children are deprived from opportunities to study, to work, they find also militancy as like is like a career, or like more as a lot of these people come to them as role models, so that it's very dangerous to focus on the aspects of education and youth employment. The cases of sexual violence and harassment are unfortunately a common reality in the region of Kashmir. According to the Doctors Without Borders study of 2006, among 510 interviewees, 11% argued that they've been a victim of sexual violence since the onset of terrorism in 1989. In addition, 63% of the respondents have heard about cases of rape, while 1 in 7 has witnessed. And as per the data provided by research in 2021, in 2014, 352 cases of rape in Jammu and Kashmir were recorded, 265 of which involved minors. So given that this is also of taboo nature and there is a lot of reluctance on behalf of victims to report, unfortunately numbers are probably much higher. And as you can imagine, survivors of sexual abuse develop a range of psychological stress and disorders, ranging from post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, suicidal tendencies, alcohol dependency, and also illicit substance abuse, or like drug abuse. So when it comes to drug addiction, that has actually become also a very fast-growing problem in Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, one needs to differentiate between licit and illicit drugs. So illicit drugs that would go into like nicotine, caffeine, or alcohol, and illicit is, we're talking about opioids, recreational, synthetic, and psychedelic drugs such as heroin, cocaine, methamphetamines, etc. There was a study published actually last year that interviewed 300 substance users and discovered that the majority of respondents were male, so 97% were male. They were in the age group of between 20 to 29, and they were not married. The prevalence of those who have throughout their lifetime, so the major illicit drugs were opioids, cannabis, and from the opioids the main one was heroin. So this one is also highlighting the fact that there's a lot of cross-border smuggling of narcotics regionally, as you can imagine, is also the fact that Afghanistan is very much close by. So this is also something that current studies should focus a lot, especially now with having the Taliban ruling over the country. So basically so this was more of like an overview of the literature review that we did for this research, and then EFSAS did like a small scale study in which we distributed 400, so we distributed questionnaires in the Kashmir Valley, and we received 401 responses from young people. So we asked questions like, for example, on the question or the statement, there are people who listen to my problems. Only 30% of the people said that they agree. So this shows that very few people, actually only 1/3 of respondents, feel confident that someone is there to listen to their problems. Then on the statement, there are people who help me change my life for better. It's even less than 30%, it's around like 27%, who feel that there's someone who's there to change their life. On the question, I often feel left alone with my problems. Again, we received around 43% of respondents of people who feel left alone. While on the statement, I often feel hopeless, 42% said that they do feel hopeless. And so both answers exhibit symptoms in the respondents of possible depressive states, which is very important to address. So on the statement, people around me often express feelings of social exclusion or discrimination. We received also 41% of people who feel that people around them feel marginalized and socially excluded. And then on the question, on the statement, people around me have turned to drugs as a result of this feeling, 40% of respondents agreed. So this again highlights the fact that drug addiction is prevalent. And just to finish, basically we made some recommendations on how to deal with this issue. So for the region of Jammu and Kashmir, one is to create more jobs for specialists in the mental health service, establish training for the personnel, so strengthen their competences, sensitize policymakers and advocates to be more aware of these problems, encourage and establish incentives for mental health staff in the rural areas where there's even less resources allocated, develop crisis teams and dedicated helplines, develop models for catering to individuals who lack caretakers, ensure access to mental care in inaccessible rural areas, and encourage raising awareness campaigns in educational systems, in schools, and sensitize in general the authorities and the local population. So that's it.
Thank you very much.